The dried gas item just came out, so I want to make an automatic farm to get an unlimited amount. But why would you want to farm these? It could be to grow them up to a happy gas so you can do useful things with them, like make an elevator that takes you from the bottom of the world to the top of the world in only 3 seconds, or have tons of these cool mini gas blocks great for decorations. Or it could be that they're a perfect block for speed bridging and they just need an auto farm to make their dream come true. Or it could just be that I've designed an automatic farm for every single item in the game of Minecraft and the dried gas is next on my list. Whatever the reason, we first need to figure out how these things come about in the game. They can sometimes be found near nether fossils in soul sand valleys, but heck if I'm going to make a block quarry to farm these. Luckily, they can also be crafted with bone blocks and gas tiers. There's only one way to get the gas tiers, and that's from a gas mob. But to get the bone blocks, we have 2 options, either a bone meal farm using composters or a skeleton farm. But efficient bone meal farms use water, which isn't in the nether dimension, where we have to be to farm the gas. But luckily, skeletons also spawn here in the nether, and they are also simpler than bone meal farms. Now, there's only 2 places where skeletons spawn in the nether, which is the nether fortresses and the soul sand valleys. But if we farm them in the nether fortress, then we won't get any gas to spawn since they never spawn inside these structures. But luckily, our second option, being the soul sand valley, will spawn both skeletons and ghast. Now, it would be very challenging to try to collect all the different mobs that spawn in the soul sand valley in order to push them into one area where we can kill them and then get their loot. So it's much easier if we come up onto the top of the bedrock ceiling in Java Edition and build in a new spawning platform. And then if we would AFK a little over 100 blocks above the actual spawning platform on this single block up here, we can make it so that the mobs will only spawn on top of our platform. That's because mobs can only spawn within 128 blocks of the player in a big sphere, which would put this platform just barely inside, with everything that is below the bedrock being so far away that the game won't attempt to place any mobs in, and any mobs that existed outside the farm would instantly despawn. We're getting close to 500,000 subscribers, so hit that button. So I have a large platform of magma blocks. These are blocks that are considered like fire. So only mobs that are immune to fire can actually spawn on top of them. So despite Enderman and skeletons that can also spawn in the Soul Sand Valley, they're both not immune to fire, therefore they won't spawn on top of this. But ghast are the only mobs within this biome that are immune, so we end up just getting a mega gas farm here. And to stop the gas from flying out, I did put in a ceiling. It doesn't have to be solid because these things are 4 blocks across. So just by having 3 block gaps, they can't fit through them. I also decided to use some fireproof wood so that when you're building this, you don't have to worry about the whole thing burning down. As well as these are top slabs so no mobs can spawn on top of them. We also come in with a wall along the edge on all sides. This way they can't walk outside of it and you can have gaps, yet you can still have the blocks spaced out without having to waste too many items. And once again, it doesn't take very many blocks to hold them in. But if we kill the ghast in their current spawn location, it's going to be really difficult to collect all the loot that's scattered across the entire platform. So I put in 2 flying machines. These are simple 2-way flying machines that can be turned around with a little bit of extra redstone, which we do have at one end over here. Essentially, the flying machine comes in and it'll get stopped because there is too many blocks on one side, and then it'll get updated but from the opposite side, which will make it go the opposite direction. And I also got these 2 synchronized so they're moving at the exact same speed. This way they're making a wall so that any ghast that are in front won't be able to slip between this hole here, as ghast are 4 blocks across and the gap is too small. I also come in with some machines on the opposite side that can turn the flying machines around while also being leveled with the ceiling so that they don't interfere with the ghast getting pushed to the far end. And the way this is done is that the flying machine is going to activate this observer here. And then what that's going to do is it's going to first update this piston over here, and that's going to extend it so that the flying machine can't get pushed past it, as it will bump into the head of the piston. Then after a short delay, we're going to update the second piston, which is going to update the opposite side, very similar to the turnaround device over there. And then this will just make the flying machine start moving in that direction. Now, where in the past flying machines could load into unloaded chunks, that is no longer the case, so you want to make sure to turn the flying machine off before leaving it. Otherwise, the flying machine will try to fly to the opposite side and it will hit unloaded chunks and it will just bump into those and freeze there and won't be able to move any further. And that's why you might sometimes find your flying machine just stuck in the middle of somewhere without moving. I also put in a on and off switch, which just comes in and will extend this piston, so never does an update. This will cause the flying machine to just bump into it, but won't be able to get updated to turn around. And then when you want to turn it back on again, you can remove power, which will remove the piston head, which causes it to update once again. Now you can use slime instead of honey, but slime can kind of bounce stuff in front of it, and that could kind of become a problem, so it's a little bit better to use honey in this case. Also, mobs are unable to spawn on top of honey, unlike slime, which they can. Have you left a like on the video yet? Now, how big the farm can be is restricted by the time it takes to actually transport the mobs. Because on average, mobs will despawn after 70 seconds. They have a 30-second grace period where they can't despawn. But then once that's gone, then they have a slim chance of despawning every game tick. But the medium amount of time, meaning the amount of time where half the mobs will despawn, is 58 seconds. So before 28 seconds, there'll be half the mobs, and after 28 seconds, the other half will eventually despawn. And this comes into play with the entire spawning platform, because if you make the farm too big, by the time the fly machine goes across the entire thing, a big chunk of your mobs would have already despawned. And of course, if you make it too small, you don't have enough spawning spaces to actually produce a significant amount of mobs. So it's kind of like a sweet middle point, and for me, it takes about 54 seconds for the fly machine to go down and back again. And this allows us that the majority of the mobs will make it back down to the side where we're going to kill them. But we can actually have a killing chamber on both sides, but the rates aren't good enough to make it worthwhile to build 2 killing chambers and 2 collection systems. Now the farm is good at producing ghast, but that will only get us the ghast tiers. We also need the bones or bone meal in order to make the bone blocks needed for the dried ghast. So looking at all the options when it comes to different things that can be composted while also grown here in the nether dimension, as well as could be easily implemented into this pre-existing farm where we have a fly machine, we kind of narrowed down to just the different types of vines. So I put in some vines right in the location where the fly machine will go. The weaving vines will grow downwards, where the twisting vines will grow upwards. And because they grow so slowly, by having both of them, there's a chance that they'll occupy the same height as the fly machine. So when it comes through here, it will break them off, and then the items will fall over here, where they can easily be collected. Now, if you've seen my video on the best bone meal farms now since the update, you'll know that these types of vines are one of the slowest growing in the game and the slowest producing bone meal, producing only 0.1 bone meal per plant per hour. Even by having all these plants here, we won't be able to collect enough bone meal to supply the amount of ghast tiers we get. And we can't expand this farm out further without complicating the collection area to a point where it's no longer worth using a bone meal farm, but instead using a skeleton farm. But speaking of a skeleton farm, we're actually here in a soul sand valley where skeletons can spawn naturally. So all they have to do is convert my ghast farm here to also produce some skeletons. So I switched out some of the magma for some stone. It could be any block that mobs can spawn on. This way we can now get skeletons to spawn here in the soul sand valley on these 2 little strips. But the problem is that our fly machines are too high, so they don't actually push these guys. We can fix this pretty easily if I just come in and place in a block underneath of this. Now these slabs are low enough to actually collide with the skeleton's hitbox and push them along while still having the fly machine high enough up so we can easily turn around without interrupting the pushing of the ghast to this end over here. Now because the fly machine goes both directions, I also had to come over here and extend the stone so the skeletons wouldn't get pushed off the hole over here and increase the height of the wall. And it's unlikely for these skeletons to stroll about because after 5 seconds of a mob being spawned into the game, their no action timer will reach a score of 100, which will prevent them from ever walking again as long as the player is greater than 32 blocks away. This is helpful as now the mobs are frozen, they will easily be pushed by our fly machine. We don't need a lot of spawning for these guys because on average when they are killed they will produce about 1 bone, which is 1/3 of all the bones needed in order to produce a dried ghast. So for every 1 skeleton spawn we need about 3 ghasts to spawn in order to get enough ghast tiers to supplement the bone. So now we move all the mobs to one end so we can kill them so we can easily collect their loot. Problem is, there's no way that they're going to die, at least not the ghast. The skeletons will die in the magma, but we need a simple and cheap way to kill the ghast while still being able to collect their loot. And the cheapest way to kill the ghast is just to come in with some powder snow. This is even cheaper and simpler than my previous ghast farm where I used wither roses. As wither roses you need a wither in order to get, where for these all you need is to find a cold biome that's near a mountain and have an iron bucket to scoop it up. Or you can always collect it from falling snow with a cauldron. And similar to Wither Roses, Powder Snow doesn't need any redstone or like pistons moving in blocks in order to suffocate them, in order to kill them, so it works really nice for this layout. The ghasts are also so big that we don't need to completely encase this, so the block over here holds them from going upwards, and we have fences along all the Powder Snow so that they can't just walk out. And we have the fences a little bit more concentrated near the center where the skeletons are going to die, as they can pathfind around and try to pathfind over here onto the bedrock. But since it's such a long ways to pathfind all the way around, by the time they try to walk over here, they'll end up dying. This also makes it less likely for them to path that direction, which they can do, and instead we'll keep it so that they end up dying where we can easily collect all their loot in one location, which will make the collection system much simpler and easier to set up. But now we need a way to actually pick up all these items so that we can collect them into storage, as these items will just despawn after 5 minutes if they're not stored away properly. So to pick up the loot from the mobs that die, I now put in some minecart rails down here with a hopper minecart, and these special type of carts can pick up items a little over a meter above them. Select items here will get picked up, and then it will move all the way to the end, where it will bounce back and go to the final side. And using a hopper minecart is the easiest, as we don't have access to water here in the nether dimension, and we can always use less rails or power rails depending on if you have more gold or iron. But now we need something for this guy to actually unload the items into. So now when the hopper cart comes up and it comes up here, the items will fall into this hopper, which then will be read by this comparator, and that just comes around and will turn off this torch, which will turn off this power, and will ultimately turn off this power rail. That's what keeps the hopper cart in place, and it will only be able to take off once again once all the items are missing from the cart, meaning they're also missing from this hopper. Right now we're having all the items collected down here into some storage. You can see when that item leaves, then all of a sudden it takes off and tries to pick up some more items. Now, it made it easier to collect all the loot from a single location, but now we have the problem that the ghast tears and the bones are all in the same container. In order to make the dried gas, we need to separate them. So I put in an automatic sorter over here, where every time the items that are from up here move down into this hopper and get moved over, before they get pushed into this hopper, they have a chance to first getting pulled downwards by the hoppers down below. And only when it's an item that can't get pulled by neither of these, then it gets continued to push along, and then we have some extra storage over here to store all the extra pieces. But the ones that are being sorted are the bones as well as the ghast here, as we will need them in order to produce the dried ghast. But rather than just sorting the bones and ghast tiers, we can do one step better by actually using the new auto-crafters. So I added one of my auto-crafters that I showed in this video here, and what we're doing is after we're sorting away the tiers and the bones are then being sorted and put it into this crafter here, which is automatically crafting them into bone meal, and then every time it does that, it produces 3 bone meal, which are filling up this crafter, and once it gets 9 of them, it will instantly convert it over into a bone block, which is then getting moved over here, and then moved over here. The ghast tiers are also being pulled aside, and both of them are being pushed from either of these sides into the auto crafter, which we have set up to craft the dried ghast. And if we check this chest over here, this is where you get an unlimited source of dried ghast. Now see how I designed an automatic farm for every other item in the game of Minecraft by checking out this playlist here. Consider becoming a supporter of mine either through Patreon, Discord membership, YouTube membership, or Twitch sub, which you can even do for free using Twitch or Amazon Prime. One of the perks you get along with this is getting your name here at the end of the video. Other than that, I'll see you guys in the next one. Bye bye!